Greetings, Dragonball fans, and welcome to a new What If series, where Raditz's initial encounter with Piccolo goes a tiny bit differently, as he recognizes Big Green as a Namekian. After dispatching the almighty farmer with a shotgun, Raditz looks around a bit, monologuing on Kakarot's many failures, as much for himself as the two other Saiyans possibly listening in via the trusty old scouter. That same trusty old scouter then spots a shiny new power level, so he flies off to say hello to his weakling of a... Wait, that's not Kakarot. What the hell? Green skin, pointy ears? Where does he know that from? Ah, of course. Those records had been old, older even than King Cold's reign, but he recalls the main notes pretty well. Something about their planet being a wasteland, barely even worth the space fuel needed to get there. There was also, apparently, no night, something that the vast majority of species kinda disliked. And the big thing that stuck out in Raditz's mind was that there was some kind of recent catastrophe that had killed off most of the population. He remembered that paragraph like he'd just read it a few minutes ago, and he could still feel that odd pit in his stomach when the words had finally sunk in. With so few Namekians remaining, and apparently not a single female of the species left on the planet, they had been marked for extermination. Being a vaguely strong species, though, they weren't going to waste the man-hours to actually attack. They were to be exterminated by patience. There was no need to spend resources and soldiers to help the natural process along. They could just sit back and wait for them all to die out. Then, maybe in 1,000 years, when the planet had recovered some viability, it could be settled by some unlucky souls with more money than sense. Raditz wonders, not for the first time, just which fate he'd prefer. To be wiped out in an instant, as most of his kind had been, or to die out slowly, at least as a pure race, unable to perpetuate themselves. If he was honest with himself, he'd actually much preferred at least being with his kin at the end. Then maybe he'd be dead, instead of trudging through this life of tears that piled up on top of him ever since. Tier upon tier of masters to serve, and tier upon tier of those masters' seemingly overwhelming power. When the green man before him eventually breaks the extended silence and asks who he is, Raditz, who's just been floating there, staring, is pulled from his introspection and asks how there are Namekians on Earth. Said Namekian stares back at him for a moment, then asks what he means. Raditz's explanation is unfortunately cut short by another power popping up on his scouter's HUD. Maybe he'll come back to interrogate this guy properly, but for now he blasts off towards this new signature. When he arrives and confronts his weakling of a brother, the short, bald man still gets tail-whipped into the lone house on this island. Kakarot still refuses to join him, so gets stomach-punched. And then there's the boy, who gets... Oh, what's this? Kakarot has managed to have a child with a local, and it actually has a tail. Interesting. And useful. Most Saiyan hybrids don't grow tails, it being a recessive trait and all. Very interesting indeed. Well, he's still got a mission, and he gives Kakarot a day to sort himself out, then come and join his older brother, or, well, say goodbye to his son, and then say goodbye to the planet. Okay, that last part may have been a bit of a stretch at Raditz's power level, but they don't know that. What with those piddly little power numbers of only 400? Laughable doesn't do it justice. As Raditz blasts off, his scouter still chirps at him, and he looks back to spot that Namekian from earlier, just floating there above the house, watching him, but wisely staying out of it all. So the green man had followed him despite the massive power difference. Ballsy, even for a guy that big. Oh, he doesn't have a scouter, does he? So probably has no idea just how weak they are all in comparison. Hang on, he lacks a scouter. So how'd he manage to find them? He must know this place pretty well and just made a logical assumption. And it's not like Raditz hadn't flown off in as straight a line as globetrotting allows. Yeah, that must be it. It's not like you can track power levels without a scouter, right? When his brother and that Namekian guy arrives at Raditz's landing site, instead of going in to attack, they ask about this Piccolo guy's people. Apparently they'd been discussing it a bit on the way here, how they were the two ultimate rivals on this planet, and wouldn't you know it, neither of them are even from it. While he's a bit put off by them wanting to talk prior to him killing one or both of them, he can't help but remember how uncomfortably close to home what he'd read about the Namekians had struck, or at least how he'd thought it had prior to finding this hybrid boy. A hybrid with a tail. An actual tail. The flight here had seen the many possibilities filling his mind with thoughts long since dead. Maybe a glimmer of hope that their once proud race isn't destined to die out after all, at least not completely. For the time being, Raditz is happy enough to retell what he knows of the Namekians, At least what he'd read while flicking through that old archive while bored out of his mind, waiting for their next mission. Kakarot looks a bit bored at this, but the Namekian, Piccolo, listens intently, his expression shifting between irritation and worry. Having expounded enough, Raditz says to his little brother that it's time to choose, and they quickly move back into the fighting stage of this little reunion. Kakarot and his large Namekian friend make a decent enough attempt at least, but are quickly put in their place by Raditz's bigger number. At around 3 times their fighting power, their obvious skills as martial artists are only so effective. But Raditz is also aware that he isn't responding to his fullest here. He is distracted by thoughts of the Namekians' dwindling fate, and continues to mix them with those of his own people, the Saiyans. They're all but dead now, with just the 4 or maybe 5 of them, if that weakling of a boy's tale is functional. But what's the point in dragging this out? He finds a handy counterpoint to all that when he's standing over Kakarot's bruised body, and he finally has decided that the guy is probably better off dead. Raditz will spare his weakling, now tailless brother the same, or arguably less meaningful life of servitude and ridicule that he himself has endured for the past 20 orbits of that slowly expanding asteroid field that was once their planet, Vegeta. Besides, lacking that tail as he does now, he would instantly become the butt of all the jokes usually aimed Raditz's way. However, as the ball of energy charges in his hand, his scouter barks a warning, and he turns just in time to see the previously weakling of a little Saiyan hybrid obliterating the precious attack pod, and his power number rapidly climbs to, and then, rather worryingly, beyond even Raditz's. His attention is drawn away from the boy for a moment when his scouter complains bitterly about yet another power, and while he manages to narrowly dodge the overpowered beam from the Namekian, things get overshadowed by a scream and something solid slamming into his chest, knocking the wind out of him. As he stares up at the blue sky, waiting for the pain in his chest and the ringing in his ears to subside, he soon starts to hear the 3 of them talking. Ha ha! Yeah, they know he's too strong. That should be obvious by now, shouldn't it? So the Namekian wants to try that beam thing again, but apparently he needs more time and a stationary target. Well, that's certainly not going to happen. When it eventually does happen, having recently seen the first Makanko supposed numbers, Raditz, now entangled in his brother's oddly effective hold, can only beg his brother not to throw their lives away. There were so few of them left now. They could be together again. They could rebuild their great sane race using these apparently not so puny Earthlings to do it. Not to worry, Piccolo says. Unlike you, Goku will be brought back to life soon enough. What does he mean, brought back? How? Dragon Balls? Wishes? Hold on, hadn't the survey team's leader made a note of something like that on Namek? You think so, but since they'd never actually seen any of those wish orb things, they'd marked it as apocryphal, likely some Namekian legend that they cling to like many a race clings to their deity of choice. If such a thing existed, surely the Namekians would have used it to undo whatever calamity befell their world. Oh, no, they're quite real, Piccolo says, as the crackling around his fingers grows in intensity. Raditz then hears Vegeta talking to Nappa over the scouter network. They are going to get their hands on those Dragon Ball things. Namek looks to actually be a bit closer to them than Earth is, if only by a few weeks' travel, so they'll head there instead. Best to not waste their time coming to Earth first. Besides, they can see the strangely flexible power numbers coming from the Namekian, Kakarot, and the hybrid brat. Who knows how high they can actually go, and then, when he's immortal, it won't matter. Wait, Raditz calls into the ether. What about me? What about you? Comes Vegeta's response. Oh, you're in trouble over there, aren't you, Raditz? Well, that's too bad. Either sort yourself out, or don't. It doesn't matter. Once I get my wish, I won't need you anymore. Then, with an audible click, both the channel, and then the entire scouter, goes dead. The Namekian raises an eyebrow at him as Raditz slumps a bit and stops struggling to free himself from Kakarot's bizarrely effective hold. Piccolo's expression changes to alarm and anger when he sees that Kakarot has all but let him go, again. It's as if he can sense Raditz wondering just what the point is. His pod is toast. There's no rescue coming. And this Piccolo guy's fingers are still glowing white hot, though, so it'll be over soon enough. Why fight it? When his brother asks what's changed, Piccolo says that he overheard someone talking in the background. Apparently, they are heading to that Namek place right now, seeking to wish to become immortal. They said they should be arriving in Namek in less than a year. At least, if their math is vaguely accurate. Oh yeah, and they're abandoning this guy to his fate. Apparently they don't care if he dies or not. Nice friends you've got there, Raditz, was it? Piccolo says, glaring down at the man, while the glow around his fingers slowly fades away. Oh, hi, Kami, Goku says suddenly, and Piccolo recoils a bit. Raditz looks around to see that another, much older-looking Namekian has appeared just behind his brother. What do you want? The younger, fitter-looking of the two green men demands. Oh, that's easy. This wrinkled old Kami guy says that he'd been listening in, and that he just wants his people to be safe. He had also forgotten most of what he knew about himself, but, as with Piccolo, the mention of Namekians rings too true to be ignored. And then there's that strange ship he remembers from Yanzabit Heights. It won't, Raditz starts to say, before the realization hits him. He'd just resigned himself to being stuck on this rock, probably dying here. If not to the Namekian's unpronounceable beam thing, then maybe at least until the soon-to-be immortal Prince and Nappa bother to show up, and what? They would, wouldn't they? Yeah, they'd show up eventually and clean up his mess, and probably him along with it. Hearing that there's another ship, however, he can use this. Maybe he can get there in time to beat Vegeta? Damn, he has no idea where this Namek place is, and with the pod destroyed, he has no way of looking it up. Besides, if they meet Vegeta on Namek before he becomes immortal himself, well, that won't end very well either, will it? It won't matter, he says again. If you thought I was strong, you have no idea. Kakarot, Piccolo, Kami, and even the boy, Gohan apparently, all regard Raditz for a moment. Then, when he doesn't continue, his brother asks just how strong the Saiyans are. Strong, he says. I'm only 1,200. Nappa is 4,000, and Vegeta is, well, he's sitting at 18,000. Unless you've got some massive tricks up your sleeves, you won't stand a chance. Neither will you, Piccolo says, just a bit smugly, like he knows exactly what's going through Raditz's head. After that statement sinks in for an awkward second or 10, the older Namekian says that he might have a solution, but it will take a bit of finessing. He knows a guy who can train Goku, and maybe, if he can pass some test, Piccolo too. Maybe even this little boy could go along too. The North Kai is known to have some great techniques that could be of use. He's just not sure if some King Yema guy will be okay with letting living people into Otherworld. No harm in asking, right? Kakarot asks, but Kami's sour look implies otherwise. As Kami expounds about King Yema's apparent temper, a small flyer arrives and lands nearby. That small bald man, along with an older one, and a woman peer out at Raditz, and then, seeing that everyone's just kind of sitting around, they venture out and approach cautiously. They should be cautious. Raditz could wipe them out with a flick of his wrist, if he was so inclined. Good thing he needs them, or, more accurately, Kami, to show him where that ship of his is. After Kami explains the plan to the two bald guys and that blue-haired woman, Krillin, Roshi, and Bulma, the little guy that Raditz had recently sent through a building asks if they can come too. He thinks the others would probably want to come as well, if only to keep up with their rival, Goku. Oh, right, that's Kakarot. Yes, let them go somewhere else to train. That will leave Raditz to twist this Kami guy's arm a bit to show him the ship. His train of thought is broken when the blue-haired woman, Bulma, walks up to him while examining pieces of the attack pod in her hands, and then she pokes at the scouter that's still attached to his head. She asks to see the thing, and, well, Vegeta has killed the connection, rendering it inert, so whatever, take it, it's useless. He watches in amazement as, all of 30 seconds later, she has taken the thing apart, poked and prodded and twisted and scraped. She thinks she can fix it, huh? Yeah, right. It's a highly advanced piece of tech. What the? It's powered back on? How did she do that? A girl never tells, she says, and winks at him before a spark flies from the thing and it dies again. She huffs and turns towards the flyer, saying that she needs better equipment, and she stalks off, an impressive collection of charred pod parts tucked under her arm. Raditz turns back to the rest of them, and is suddenly aware that there are only two other people here. The Bulma woman and the old guy. Roshi, was it? Hey, where'd everyone go? He demands. Heh, Roshi laughs. Off to do some special training, and it looks like you were not invited. Damn it, he needs that Kami guy's ship. You two coming? Bulma calls from the flyer's cockpit. Raditz stares at her for a moment, then eyes the pod parts stacked haphazardly on the bench seat behind her. If she can get a dead scouter to power on, then maybe, just maybe, she can be of use to him. Fine, he'll play nice for now, And once she gets his scouter working properly, he'll find that Kami guy again and get his ship. Well, any ship will do. One way or another, he has to get to Namek. And so as Raditz clambers into Bulma's rather undersized flyer and awkwardly sits next to Roshi, we will bring Part 1 to a close. Raditz's brother, Kakarot, or Goku as he calls himself for some reason, has vanished, along with the Namekian, Piccolo, the hybrid boy, that other small guy, and, worst of all, the owner of the only other ship he knows about, Kami. But where have they all disappeared to? Will Raditz be able to procure himself a new ship? Will he get to Namek on time, or will Vegeta beat him to the punch? Find out next time on Dragon Ball. What if Raditz recognized Piccolo?